I went back to the 70s. I went back to tried and tested what I know and love. You know, I thought, I'm not going to try and compete with the kids. You know, it's like, you know, sort of your uncle in a sort of sequin top, you know, trying to be hip. I thought, I don't want to embarrass myself, just in case I haven't quite got the moves right. So I just went back to all the things that, you know, kind of first drew me to music, and that was really in the 70s. All the people that made music in the 80s were kids of the 70s. We all grew up in the 70s. You know, most of us were kind of teenagers then. And so all of those things, Bowie, you know, Mark Bolan, Roxy Music, English bands like Cockney Rebel, and, you know, even some of the kind of more glammy bands like The Sweet and, you know, things that were really campy. They were the things that we grew up on. So, and then punk. You know, the 70s was quite a bonkers decade for music. You know, you had Michael Jackson, you had the disco thing, you had punk rock, you had, you know, electro, and then you had like reggae as well in the 70s. So it was quite a mad decade, very eclectic. But it was a real, like, for me, I think it was a real 70s endeavour. I just wanted it to be totally like a tribute to the 70s and totally a tribute to all the things that I loved as a kid.
I wouldn't be here, my friend, if I had no faith.
I was recording a covers album before I recorded This Is What I Do. I was going to do my kind of pin-ups. You know, Bowie did that great album. Well, some people don't like it, I love it. And so I was recording a bunch of songs. I'd done video games, I'd done a couple of Dylan tracks, I'd done a Leonard Cohen song, a Yoko song. And in the middle of doing that, I just suddenly thought, I need to write. You know, it was really inspiring doing those songs, and it just made me really want to record, particularly doing Leonard Cohen and, you know, video games. Dylan, Joni Mitchell and Leonard Cohen, in terms of lyrics, are the sort of three people that, you know, inspire me the most and help me to kind of stay on my, you know, on my sort of toes, if you like. You know, I think they're great writers. It's quite an exciting time, you know, because there's lots of possibilities and all the old rules are out the window and nobody quite knows, like, for example, with the internet, no one really knows what it does, what the purpose of this thing, you know, and so it's early days in terms of that, but I think I'm finding it very exciting at the moment. I think it's a really sort of fertile time for creativity, and I quite like the fact that I have sort of immediate access to, I hate the word fans, but, you know, people that are into what I do.
Had to get it wrong to get it right. He crossed himself and I shook my head.
I've been working with Culture Club. I made a decision a couple of years ago that I wanted to make another record with Culture Club because I always felt like there was at least one great record that we hadn't made, you know. I think the first two albums, you know, were excellent. I mean, Kissing to Be Clever was like full of youthful exuberance, you know, and then I think Colour by Numbers was kind of pretty much a perfect pop record. And then after that, things were quite sort of patchy. So I've always felt that there was a record that we should have made. But obviously now, at this point in time, you know, we're all a lot older. So there's different pressure. You know, there's no pressure to kind of be what we were, and there's no pressure to kind of be what's hip. So, you know, the option is to kind of do what we feel rather than worrying about, oh, we might make this kind of record because it will get played on the radio. You know, those options are out the window in a way. So it's quite nice to sort of have that freedom.
Jesus loves you, don't you know? My God is bigger than your God. My God is better than yours.
It's easier to make life, a sense of life, looking back. When you're in it, you're just in it. It's very easy to kind of sit in hindsight and say, oh, this is what I meant, or this is what I was trying to do. But when I was younger, you know, I was enjoying myself, and I was kind of, in a way, full of my own self-importance. So I wasn't really thinking about the kind of cultural impact of what we were doing. It's only as I've got older and I've met people who've said, you know, you are the reason I came out, or you're the reason I changed my gender. I mean, wow, you know, it's like, really? Wow, you know, I didn't know it was that powerful. But, you know, I think by being yourself in life, you encourage other people you inspire people to feel the same way about whatever they are. And it's not just about sexuality, it's about anyone who you know, anyone who's different for any reason. London, England, you know, it feels generally like people are quite open-minded. You know, I think the British in general, the Scottish, you know, the Welsh, they seem to be quite cool. You know, there doesn't seem to be. I don't notice any kind of animosity. Do you know what I mean? But I think around the rest of the world, it seems that, you know, things are kind of going backwards, or maybe the sort of pace of change is too fast for a lot of other countries. You know, I think a lot of countries like Russia and countries in Eastern Europe, they are kind of really uncomfortable with what they see as the kind of politicization of gay culture. You know, and I think the problem with a lot of kind of conservative people is they focus only on the sexual aspect of what gay people are about. And as I said to a French journalist a couple of weeks ago, my gayness takes up about 2 hours a month, at a push, if I'm lucky. The gay part of my life is so small. You know, I've got a mother, I've got a job, I've got bills to pay, you know. But, you know, these kind of homophobic people tend to kind of just focus on what they think or imagine we get up to. And, you know, for most of us, I mean, if you were to measure your own straightness by how often you have sex, it might be pretty low as well. Do you know what I mean? I mean, how many people do actually get it on a regular basis? You know, so it's a silly kind of argument, really. But I just feel that attack isn't the answer. I think education is the solution. I don't think sort of wearing a T-shirt with Putin with makeup on is really going to help. I think you need to be dignified and you need to educate. And in some ways, you know, the most political thing you can ever do is be yourself.
You need a little more faith. Don't you know what your heart is for?
What I say to people now is the one thing I did really badly was being a drug addict. So that's the one thing I failed at, you know, that was one thing I did really badly. So I know that it's not really a good option for me now at this point in my life, you know. I've been very successful in lots of other areas of my life, but that was one part of my life where I really was an absolute failure. So for me, you know, I think that all my best work has been done in clarity. If I look at my career and look at the things that I'm really proud of, and there's not, you know, there's a handful of things that I'm like, that's really good, you know. I'm quite modest in some ways, but there are a few things that I think are great, and they have all been done when I was breathing, you know, when I was clear-headed, when I was on top of things. You know, I haven't really produced much good stuff when I've been a mess. So, you know, what I say now is that, you know, both of those things are a kind of, you know, both of them are a commitment. Being a mess is a commitment, being sober is a commitment, but being sober definitely works for me. You know, I wouldn't trade what I have right now for what I had when I was a mess, you know, which was very little. You know, life is very shiny at the moment, and you know, that kind of energy is very palpable. And I certainly wouldn't be here if I wasn't sober. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if I wasn't sober. So there's so much in a way for me to be grateful for in terms of my sobriety. You know, I'm just coming up to 6 years, absolutely sober for 6 years, no drink, no drugs. And, you know, people say to me, oh, you're boring. I'm like, no, I was boring when I was drunk. I was like, you should meet me when I was drunk. I was really boring.
Lady Bunny got a halo.
I'm Boy George. Look for me on Last.fm.
You big kiss the window.